Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, the Vice President of Thought Leadership for Stamply. I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to the first episode of Make Your Own Webinar, Delivering Strategic Value in Treasury. As a practitioner, I attended many webinars, and I was always a little bit frustrated that I didn't get the content that I really wanted. So I decided to create a product where you could do just that. So the process is a finance professional or treasury professional reaches out to me, chooses a topic and their favorite sport coat. They pose 3 questions to me, and then I'm to answer them in 10 minutes or less. We all know that's tough for me. And then you consume and share your webinar. It's as easy as that. So this is going to be a key feature that we're going to be rolling out as part of the finance trends and disruption community. This is a community where you can get answers from your peers. You can share your knowledge to build your professional brand, and you can also network on your terms in a trusted, noise-free environment. We would love everyone to join our community. So I'd like to have a shout out to Sarah Kozel. She is my initial webinar designer. Sarah is a CTP, Certified Treasury Professional. Like myself, she's a Treasury Analyst at Elite Dental Partners. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for your questions. So Sarah's first question revolves around the Treasury function. Where have we been more relevant than expected, and where should we be more relevant and involved? Of course, I'm going to focus on the latter. We should be involved in every area as much as possible. The second question is around cash forecasting, finance versus Treasury. Are we on the same team? Are we rivals? Of course, we're going to have to add FP&A in there because they like to be another cook in the kitchen. And then we're going to talk about Treasury training. How detailed should this be to other departments? I'm going to couch this just a hair differently in that how do we collaborate across the enterprise from Treasury? How do we let them know what we're doing, and how do we add value across the enterprise? And so when I look at the role of Treasury, I like to look at it in 3 different areas: things that will never change, things that are changing currently, and things that might be changing in the future. And so we look at, of course, the bedrock. Everyone still thinks all we do is cash management and talk to banks all the time. So we manage our bank accounts. We ensure cash visibility. We have as much control of cash as possible, and cash forecasting. So we should be heavily involved in that. I don't know if we're involved more than we're expected, but we should be more involved in cash forecasting. Kind of to the second point of Sarah's, if we have cash forecasting efforts going on beyond Treasury, we want to harmonize those. In terms of relationship management, we have our relations with our banks, Treasury services vendors, our investors, managers, if we are lucky enough to have money to invest. I think the dynamics are just changing, and we should own those relationships as much as possible, and also be more proactive and honest and authentic in our communication. And we're probably going to have more relationships to manage because a lot of Treasury departments and finance departments have more applications in the cloud. And then in terms of professional development, I think more than expected, people are challenged with taking more ownership of their personal professional development, which I think is great. We should do that, but also the professional development of the personnel. So I think that's welcomed as well. We want A players on our team, but that's a whole separate webinar. Sarah, if you want to give me some more questions, I'm happy to do that one as well. Emerging areas of responsibility. I see accounts payable ownership and accounts receivable ownership becoming more and more prevalent, and I love it. I think we should have direct reporting from AP and AR up to Treasury. I think what's really driving this change is the technology, and so there's tremendous technology available in terms of companies managing accounts payable and accounts receivable, giving us visibility right into that cash conversion cycle. So it only makes sense that Treasury owns that cash conversion cycle. So if you can't get ownership of it, let's learn how to collaborate, and more on that a little later. And then also FP&A, I think that's been coming more under the purview of Treasury. If it's not more collaboration, I think we'll get ownership of that. And then the last several points, it depends on what company you're at, how involved you are. So I was a Treasury practitioner way back in the day, and I was involved in all of these areas. So I think it depends on your company. Areas where I think people are more involved than expected. So if you were to talk to me and ask me all the things I was involved in, you're probably like, oh, wow, that was a lot of things. Again, it depends on your company, complexity, and the size of your Treasury department. So risk management, almost everyone's involved in the financial risk management side of things, right? Maybe your counterparty risk exposure, your currency exposure, your interest rate exposure, and things of those natures, but it goes well beyond that. I was involved in managing our insurance policies across the globe, and that's becoming even more interesting these days, right? And then corporate governance, compliance, investor relationships, and M&A. What should you be involved in? All of it. I mean, I learned I probably crammed about 15 years of a Treasury career in like 7 or 8 years, and I'm still using the knowledge that I have today. So I would say go for it. And then in terms of areas of future responsibility, I think we'll have ownership of FP&A. We're going to own IT services management, which I would love. We're going to be very involved in professional development programs. I would encourage us to take ownership of that across the enterprise, given the analytical nature of that. We're going to be charged with our online brand management in terms of the risk management, but also our reputation risk management. Those are a separate webinar, and I could go on and on. But I think that we should aspire to have as much knowledge about our company as possible. When we see technology changing, let's get out there and own it, and we can be the expert at our company. So if there's no expert at your company in terms of artificial intelligence, do it. Take the ball from me. Many years ago, when I worked at a company called Performative, I just learned an awful lot about cloud computing before it was really out there, and that really helped me catapult my career and my love for everything technology. And so let's take a look at our second question around cash forecasting, finance versus treasury versus FP&A. Unfortunately, I think that's the state of the union at a lot of companies. So we have this battle going on. So let's talk about what causes the misalignment, and then let's talk about how we get things aligned and really have our company get value out of all the time we're spending in cash forecasting. So the causes of misalignment, treasury, finance, and FP&A are often managed in silos, unfortunately. There's decentralized management of data. There's lack of visibility in the uses of cash forecasting across departments. So I had personal experience in this area. So the CFO was looking at, I don't know what he was looking at. He calls me up. Hey, I see this cash forecast number from blah, blah, blah. I'm like, where did you get that number from? He goes, oh, Jeff. Jeff was our FP&A leader. And I'm like, well, Jeff didn't get that number from me. So there's just a misalignment. So we need to understand exactly who's doing it and why we're doing it and how we harmonize that. And then part of the difference is due to the purposes, which is perfectly fine. We can have different methods and departments in different areas, but we need to understand a bedrock of cash forecasting success is understanding the purpose of the forecast. So in Treasury, we usually drive in our own lane about daily working capital, daily cash, maybe weekly cash. As soon as we go medium term, balance sheet, here come the cooks in the kitchen, especially our finance folks and even the CFO. And then long-term capital structure, everybody wants to come to the kitchen. You have finance, treasury, and FP&A. And then kind of another layer around this misalignment is also we have differences in the data, the methods, models, and technology, and that can actually vary within Treasury if you're using information from AP&A or so. How do we get around the misalignment, or how do we work to mitigate that? Well, first we have to have meeting of the minds. Finance, Treasury, FP&A, everyone in all these departments who's involved. So let's understand what's currently being done and why. Let everybody say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. For Treasury, we should take the lead in making everyone invest in understanding the drivers of cash flow. So we need to do that first in our forecasting variances. Then we need to educate everyone that's going to be involved in cash forecasting, whether it's finance, FP&A, Treasury, APAR. We need to educate them relative to the dynamics of the cash flow, inflows, outflows, how's it impacting it, the timing, who's pushing the button on those things. You want to harmonize your data, methods, models, and systems. It's not that we want to push down from Treasury. We do this because we know what we're doing. I got news for you, folks. There's a lot of FP&A professionals out there that are really good at cash forecasting. And there's also a lot of folks that are across the globe that might be a little bit better than we are. So let's harmonize the best practices. And then lastly, we need to define, monitor, manage and communicate cash forecasting success. So all these things will help for that. So at the end of the day, the question was Treasury versus finance. Cash forecasting should be Treasury plus finance plus FP&A. So let's talk about, on the last point, how involved should Treasury be in training people on Treasury across the enterprise? I think the question, I'd like to tweak it towards how do we collaborate across the enterprise? How do we get people to understand what we do, how we do it, and why we do it, and kind of invite us to the party, right? So we can add more value across the enterprise and take on these emerging responsibilities, take ownership of things that will value our company and promote our internal brand within the company and get us a seat at that strategic table. Now, the good news is with COVID, we got our seat. Hopefully we were all ready for it. So we need to teach people outside of Treasury our language. We do have our own language. So if it's someone in marketing, sales, whether that even accounting folks might have a little bit different twist, operations. So we need to invest in that. Sometimes they don't understand our language. We need to identify our internal customers, right? We need to engage them, define what our success looks like for them and how we do better. And so a little story from my background, I was a treasury manager. The CFO challenged me to give a presentation to everyone in the office of the CFO, which is pretty great back then to have to push this out via a video call back then, which was a big thing. And so what I did was I had to map every way that cash moves across the whole world, who did it, what systems they used, and how and why we did it. And so after the presentation was over, even the folks in AP and AR came up to me and they're like, wow, I didn't know you guys were doing all that. Now I understand why you were over here bugging me all the time. So a lot of the misconception or misalignment is just because there's not an investment in understanding what our colleagues do and investing in letting them know what we do. And actually they were pretty impressed with all the stuff that my boss and I were doing. Akin to that, we need to understand the languages, right, of marketing, HR, and sales, so we can understand their challenges, right? We need to understand what they do in their roles and guess what, they'll ask you about yours. Let's just ask our colleagues what they need in terms of data and technology, and let's help them get it. And kind of at the base of all this is, you should be open to knowing your colleagues beyond work and let them know you. Maybe your kids both run track, go to the same middle school, but in today's world, it's incredibly important that we're all on the same team. And so having that personal relationship is something that's incredibly important. And so we got those 3 questions. Hopefully I'm under 10 minutes. That was my goal. So make your own webinar simple. Choose your topic, sport code, create 3 questions, and I will create that webinar for you, which we will share within the community and we'll share on LinkedIn. And we'll hopefully we'll help our webinar designers impact their professional brands. If you have any questions about the finance trends and disruption community, or would like me to make a webinar just for you, please send me an email to ernie.humphrey@stampley.com. Again, that's ernie.humphrey@stampley.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for your valuable time. Make the rest of your day great, everyone. Thank you.